With how popular vintage and outdoor dirt racing is becoming in the United States, it makes more and more sense for you to be able to buy a rear motor car. However, since the 22 from Losi and the B5 from Associated, a mainline rear motor car hasn't been released in a long time. Of course, this isn't an issue if you're a long-time racer and have hung on to all your old stuff. However, if you're like me and you haven't been around for that long, this can be a bit of an issue. So what are you supposed to do if you're like me and you haven't been around in the hobby for too long, or you just don't have all your old stuff anymore? Well, in this video we're going to be going over how to make a rear motor raceable car for less than $400. The rules are very simple. I wanted to create something that you could ideally walk into your local hobby shop and buy yourself all in bulk. So that means no Amazon, no AliExpress, no Temu, and no Banggood. I also want to go over the elephant in the room of the RB5 from Associated. Yes, it's a very good buggy and it can be tuned to be an excellent buggy. However, there are certain things with it that I wanted to skirt over, specifically the charger situation. So in this video we're going to be going over how to make something a little bit cheaper than that, while also putting you on a better pedestal to start off with more upgrades. Before we begin, however, I'd like to thank some of my sponsors, starting with CowRC. CowRC makes some of the best stuff for cleaning and maintaining your RC car, be it if you're a racer or a basher. So if you want to save a little bit on your next purchase from them, be sure to use code ROACHRC, all caps, at checkout. Secondly, I'd like to thank EuroRC. If you live in the UK or EU and want to save a little bit from them, be sure to use code ROACHRC5 at checkout instead. And lastly, we have A-Main Hobbies. Anything you guys buy using the link in the description below or the annotation above will directly support me as well. With that out of the way, why don't we go over which kit we're going to choose for this video, which is actually right here. Now you have three main choices in today's world of RC racing if you want a sub $250 kit, or if you just want a rear motor kit at all. First, you have the GeForce Genova. The GeForce Genova was designed in part by Masami Hirosaka supposedly, and it's a budget option for people looking to find a cheap kit and want to relive the old days of RC with modern electronics. The Genova itself, from what I can tell online, is a decent quality buggy with only three real downsides. The first is the subject of hardware. A lot of the screws in the buggy, especially the underside, are Phillips head screws. Most modelers and racers in general do not like Phillips head screws due to how easy they are to strip, even with proper tools. The second problem with the Genova is the fact that you can only really buy it in Japan. Yes, you can buy it in places like eBay, but you will have to pay import fees and such, very much eating into our budget of $400. The last part sort of ties into this, as the instructions of the kit are all in Japanese. So unless you can read it or are already an experienced builder, you're going to have some issue building the Genova. The next buggy I'm going to go over will be the PR Racing S1RM. Now, by all intents and purposes, this is the highest quality rear motor car you can buy today. In terms of materials, it's very much up to date with high quality shocks, carbon fiber parts here and there where needed, and even a ball diff, which is a huge upgrade. Kai City RC did an excellent video on this buggy not too long ago, which I will link off in the annotation above and the description below. And in terms of quality and price, it's very much excellent value for money. There's a very good reason though as to why I did not order the S1RM, however, and it was the fact that it was not in stock in time for the end of the year or for certain races coming up. And also, since this buggy only really accepts modern, expensive shorty packs, our budget for batteries becomes much harder to keep in check. I will say though, if you have the budget and you want a fully loaded race rear motor car, the PR Racing S1RM is your best bet. This of course leaves us with the main star of this video, the only rear motor car left I haven't mentioned, and the only 10th scale kit you can buy from Kyosho at the moment, the Dirtmaster. Now, for all intents and purposes, the Dirtmaster is a re-release of the old RB5 buggy from 2007. It's a rear motor, plastic chassis car that costs $200. Period. Now, I know I'm a bit late to capitalize on the excitement of this re-release, but better late than never. The Dirtmaster is basically Kyosho's answer to the GeForce Genova I mentioned earlier. The only difference is the fact that you can actually buy it in parts of the world outside of East Asia. The other advantage that the Dirtmaster has over the other rear motor options is the fact that any and all parts you have for the RB5 that you may have stashed somewhere will work on the Dirtmaster, because like I said, it's pretty much the same car. This is what the car looks like built up with all the electronics and the body being painted. As you can see, it's already been run, and I'll talk about that in a bit, but for now let's talk about the electronics I went with. First up, we have the motor and ESC. The motor itself is a 15-turn dynamite motor that can be bought for less than $20 at your local hobby shop or A-Main Hobbies. The ESC was about the same price at $21 as it was a Hobbywing 1060 brushed ESC with very basic setting selection. You have to move these weird little tabs on the top that you have to move in order to select LiPo mode and such. The ESC I got at my local hobby shop had a Tamiya connector, so I poorly slaughtered a Dean's T-style connector, but there are versions of this ESC with the T-style connector put on by default. Speaking of LiPos, we have this LiPo battery. It's a Genze 60C 4000 mAh sport pack that comes in the shape of an old NIM battery. I bought this one for $30 on A-Main, but you should be able to find something like this at different hobby shops. Next up, we have the servo. This high-tech servo was about as good as you're going to get for something that costs less than $50. It's labeled as a high-speed servo, and even though it isn't as fast as other servos that I've used in the past, it's plenty fast for outdoor dirt and indoor dirt where I'll be primarily running this car. Now, for the receiver and transponder, I'll be honest. There's no real way to get around the transponder receiver cost unless you buy either someone else getting rid of stuff used, or if you just get really lucky. For receivers, if you're really on a budget, I recommend FlySky, as the price of a receiver for them is much lower than other brands. Also, I won't be adding them into the final price for this build for stupid YouTuber reasons. What I will be adding is everything else. For example, this battery charger. No, not that one, this one. Shock oil, and of course diff oil, as the Kyosho Dirtmaster comes with a gear diff. Oh, and tires. Now the Dirtmaster does come with wheels and tires, but I didn't want to chance them being bad, but even though when I got them in the package, they felt pretty good. Instead, I went with J-Concepts in the rear for double Ds, and J-Concepts Groovies in the front. After I assembled the car, I hit the track at the now revived Barn RC Raceway in Barnesville, Georgia. Of course, this 10-scale 2-wheel-drive brush buggy is far too small and underpowered for this big track, but it didn't have much trouble in terms of traction and steering. The motor did seem a bit underpowered though. But on a smaller track, I honestly think this $20 motor could handle itself just fine. As for how the Dirtmaster itself handled, I must say it handled pretty well with the base setup the manual calls for, even with the gear diff, with the only things I'd change would be the lower shock eyelets in the rear to be a bit longer to rate or lower the droop, and raise the fluid in the shocks from 500 CST to 550 CST to allow it to handle jumps a bit better without bottoming out too much. Also, I'd add some lead weights in the front to heavy it up a little bit, as this buggy is very light. If you're going to run this car in an indoor track, I'd possibly even go higher than that, as the shocks come with 5-hole pistons. I'll have more running footage of this car when I do my actual review of it later this year or early next year. But for now, let's just tot up how much we've actually spent. First up, we have the kit, which was $200. The motor and ESC were $40 combined. The battery was $31. The charger was $60. The servo was $40. The oils were $22. And the lead weights were $6. And this leads us up to a total of $395. $5 left over to spend on, I don't know, a double cheeseburger at McDonald's. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you find yourself coming back from time to time. I plan on keeping the Dirtmaster and running it against some of its rivals, including the RB10 I mentioned at the beginning of this video, so be sure to stay tuned for that. Also, I'd like to thank my active patrons Michael Williams, RC World Discord server, Casey Nix, Ben Reeves, Dave Armstrong, Joe Jenkins, Rob Bedingfield, Kaden Merks, Ian Petrie, Spiro Harvey, Logan Jutkins, and especially Buddy Howell and Morrison Watt. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.